Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today we are in the fourth Sunday of the season of Easter year A. This Sunday is normally called as Good Shepherd Sunday. The image of Good Shepherd of Jesus is the well known and well loved throughout the history. In the Old Testament, especially in the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Psalms, we come across many references to the image of Good Shepherd. We read phrases like, "The Lord is my shepherd." "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel." "He is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand." "He will feed his flock like a shepherd." And there are numerous phrases we read on this image in the Old Testament. We also have many references to this image in the New Testament. The country of Judea had less agricultural land. Thus, there were many shepherds, and the figure of shepherds were very familiar. But the life of shepherd was very hard. Due to the shape of the landscape, that is, the land had many steeps, low slopes, and sharp edges. So a shepherd has to be always with his sheep. He was working for 24 hours. Sheep were always liable to stray away and get lost. So sheep has to be constantly watched. The shepherd's task was not only constant but dangerous also. Shepherd had to guard the flock against wild animals, especially against wolves, and there were always thieves and robbers ready to steal sheep. So, shepherd has to protect his sheep from thieves. In Palestine, people had sheep flocks largely for their wool. Thus, sheep were with the shepherd for years, and often they have names by which the shepherd calls them. The shepherd is the first one to see the lamb at its birth. At the time of pasture, shepherd would go first to see that the path was safe, and sometimes the sheep had to be encouraged to follow. If a sheep would be unwilling to follow their shepherd, then the shepherd would carry one of the lambs across. When its mother saw her lamb on the other side, she crossed too, and soon all the rest of the flock would follow. At the end of the day, when sheep were going into the fold, the shepherd held his rod across the entrance quite close to the ground, and every sheep had to pass under it, and as each sheep passed under, the shepherd quickly examined it to see if it had received any kind of injury on that day. Yes, shepherds were always sleepless, far-sighted, weather-beaten, leaning on his staff and looking out over his scattered sheep. But they loved their sheep. They kept every one of their sheep in their heart. In this context, we understand why the image of a shepherd was most loved and used. Constant vigilance, fearless courage, patient love for his flock were the necessary characteristics of a shepherd. In the final verses of the gospel passage, Jesus talks about the door. Actually, Jesus applied that to himself. Jesus says, "I am the door." In this parable, Jesus spoke about two kinds of sheep folds, that is, shelter for sheep. In the villages and towns, there were community sheep folds where all the village flocks were sheltered when they returned home at night. These folds were protected by a strong door. Only the guardian of the door held the key. But when sheep were out on the hills in the warm season and could not return at night to the village, they were collected into sheep folds on the hillside. These hillside sheep folds were just open spaces enclosed by a wall. In them there was an opening by which the sheep come in and go out, but there was no door. What happened was that at night the shepherd himself lay down across the opening, and no sheep could get out or get in except over his body. In the most literal sense, the shepherd was the door. When Jesus said, I am the door, he mentioned this. Through him and through him alone, we find access to God. Yes, Jesus is the door. Through him alone, entrance to God becomes possible for us. Jesus says that there are thieves and robbers. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, sets himself in contrast to hirelings and robbers. The hireling, the robber, takes up this business of shepherding for his own sake. The hireling, the robber, is not interested in the work but interested in the wages alone. It is for himself he does what he does. His object is to make gain for himself. When there is a danger, the hireling, the robber, tries to safeguard himself first, not his sheep. On the other side, the object of the Good Shepherd is to protect sheep, even at the cost of sacrificing his life. Yes, the Good Shepherd always aims for an abundant life for his sheep. We see this image of Good Shepherd is used both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament for the religious and political leaders. Thus, when Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd, Jesus also makes a religious and political statement. Dear friends, do we really see Jesus Christ as our Good Shepherd and we are his sheep? If yes, what are the implications? Do we live them in our life? May God bless you all. Amen.